street. Look at the moves, the spin, the corkscrew, the touchdown. Turbin, 6-yard touchdown.
What is going on, everybody? Liv Mood's here for TurboMood, joined by my host, Robert Turbo Turbin, and we have a very special guest today, Jeff Nadu. He is a sports betting pro, basically. You've been in this industry since 2009, I believe. You've been doing this for a while. So we're very excited and honored to have you on here to get your perspective on this crazy, very fast growing industry that seems to just be getting bigger and bigger every single day. So Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Liv. Good to be with you. And Robert, I appreciate you having me. I wouldn't call me a pro. I think a lot of people would take offense to that. But no, I appreciate the kind words. I've done this a long time. I've been on this wild place called Twitter for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I don't go punch a clock like a normal person anymore. So yeah, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for having me. I've told you, I think you're doing a really great job in the business. And it's nice to see a Super Bowl champion talking to me. That's pretty cool. Not many people can say that.
Hey, I just hope I didn't lose you a lot of money during the Super Bowl in 2000. We're not going to talk about that.
No, good, I can't say I remember you making too many egregious mistakes as far as I can remember.
I did my part. You know what I'm saying?
You did.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. Jeff, so you, like I said, you've been around a while. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this crazy industry. You know, what brought you here? What are you up to right now? Any plans for the future in this industry? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of cool that you guys are doing stuff like this because when I do stuff on my own, I don't usually talk about myself that much, and no one really ever asks like, how did I get in, and what was my life like before I did all this? And so I've been gambling since I was, I don't know, probably in 3rd or 4th grade. I think that's probably when it was. Throughout middle school, high school, I was a gambler. When I graduated from high school, I was in Philly at the time. I started running around doing things I shouldn't do. I was taking bets, giving out loans, all sorts of stuff. Did a lot of things I probably shouldn't do. I probably should be in jail for at this point. But again, the statute of limitations have passed, so there's nothing that can be done about it now. But so look, in kind of a sad way, some of my friends went to prison. I decided, you know what? I wasn't raised like this. My parents didn't do this kind of thing. I was raised well. I was never in those sorts of situations. And I said, you know what? I got to get out of Philly. I got to move out. And I got a real job. At the time, I worked for my dad. He was in the construction business. Then I got a job at a bank. And I was always doing sports betting on the side. And like 2008, 2009, I kind of had thought, I saw Twitter was becoming a thing. Facebook was kind of becoming a thing of the past. And Twitter was kind of becoming popular. It was a little bit easier because on Facebook, as you guys know, if you like post constantly, it looks just weird doing that.
Awkward.
Yeah, and on Twitter, you could post like every 5 seconds, and it was okay to do that. And
right.
You know, initially gambling Twitter was not a thing. There were a few guys that are still around today, but it was really just me trying to get on there, have something I could use as like an outlet. And a few years later, I started making videos. Like I still have some of the first videos I ever did, and they're really short and to the point. Nobody watched them. And I found a company offshore that was doing this. They were giving out videos each week where they would break down the NFL and college football. And I reached out to the guy that ran the videos like 3 or 4 times. I said, look, like, I just want to do a video or 2 a week. Like, I don't have any connections. Like, I'm just starting out. But I said, I can come on camera and talk about a game. And I'm decent at it. So the guy gave me a shot. And the goal there was to kind of stay with them and maybe get my own show. And then my dad recommended down the road to do a podcast, and I started doing that and kind of getting my name out there. And, you know, before you knew it, I had followers, and I guess the goal was always to get paid to do it and leave a job I was at, and I was able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, gambling Twitter, I'm sure when you started was significantly different than it is now. But
Oh, yeah.
I feel like out of all the social platforms right now, Twitter's where it's at for sports betting. I've kind of navigated through a bunch of different social platforms to figure out which one is the best, you know, who has the most people on there, what's the demographic. And it seems like Twitter is like where everyone's posting shows. People are going live from Twitter now. It kind of seems like it's taking over in the sports gambling space.
Yeah, I think it's always been like that. I mean, there would be people that would have broken out and went on Instagram or whatever, but Twitter is the main spot. That's always where I've done things. It's just the easiest way. For a while, you could just go on Periscope. It would post right to Twitter, and it was just always kind of been where I kind of went, and that's where most of my counterparts would go as well. So yeah, I think it's a gift and a curse for the industry, just because you can truly create an account in 5 minutes and be whoever you want on the internet. So I think that's a little bit of a curse in the business. But yeah, Twitter's it is a cauldron at times. I think I cared a lot more about what people said up to me many years ago. Now any good press is press, and that's how I look at it. And some of the places I've been at have kind of taught me that. So yeah, it's a fascinating place, gambling Twitter.
Well, it's like you said earlier, too. I mean, in sports betting, things are constantly happening all the time, right? And Twitter is really the only resource that you have where you can say things on the spot. People are going to read it,
Yeah.
The other platforms really don't provide that, right? Sports betting, you might be betting at halftime. You might be betting on a free throw that's happening during a game, et cetera, right? Twitter provides that, which is really cool. I'm just, kind of getting started in it, as you know.
Yeah.
What's kind of like your strategy when you approach a game? You're going to bet on something, a race, whatever it is. What's your strategy going into it, and what gives you the confidence to then help others and their strategies as well?
Yeah, I've always been like, I think people always ask me, like, why didn't you go into like normal media, right? Like stand on a sideline and talk about a game. I don't think I can truly be myself that way. I like to say words I shouldn't say. And I think to be kind of set yourself apart from others, you have to kind of be interesting and compelling and even controversial maybe. As far as what do you look at, I think that really goes into whatever sport you're looking at. I've always said, and to anyone that will listen, I think to truly be like decent and make a career out of just even doing content, you have to become particularly proficient at certain things. So whether for me was college basketball, that's always been my kind of number one. But I think some people become obsessed with kind of trying to know everything about anything. And look, I think I'm pretty much versed in every sport, but there are sports that I'm particularly strong in, and I become pretty proficient and know what to look for and know what to find and know what matters and what doesn't matter. And, I think if you can be respected at one thing, like for you were a running back. You weren't a cornerback, you were a running back. And I think in sports betting, it's similar. I think you just have to try to be really proficient at certain things. Some people are really proficient at live lines or first halves or whatever. So I would just kind of recommend doing something like that. And also be interesting, be funny, be controversial, be willing to say things. One of the things that I think allowed me to kind of gain followers and gain a platform was, I would go viral. I would just go on and scream at the camera after a game if I would lose. Or I remember a couple of years ago when the Eagles took Jalen Hurts at the draft, I had a video that went viral. I think I had like 1 million views on it. So, I'm organic. I am who I am. I wear tracksuits and I spike my hair and I wear gold. That's my thing. I'm who I am. This is me. I never. Right. I think some people also in this business become like these characters where, like I said, you can be anyone you want on the internet. I've always shot straight. I've always shared my real name, who I am, my identity. And again, that's become a curse as well, because there are people on the internet that will go and find your family and they'll really involve things that shouldn't be involved. But
right.
I've always was taught, just be yourself. There are going to be people that don't like you, that do like you, but the goal is to have them all listen to you. And I find compelling one thing about what I've done. The people that hate me, every one of them watch what I do, and that's the goal. So
they're still following you. So
right.
They're still engaged.
They're getting the viewers. So
yeah,
did you? What was your reaction to the Jalen Hurts pick? We got to know that now.
It was pretty bad. It was funny because this is interesting. So at the time, this was what April. When was it? It was last year, 2020, right? It was during the pandemic, wasn't it?
Yep.
I think it was. Yeah. So at that time, I was probably 320 pounds. I've since lost like 100. I'm down in the 220s now, but wow. I was significantly fatter than I am now. And I was sitting on my couch in my living room, and I had always streamed like Eagles games, and like I would do reactions and stuff. And I told myself, the first pick I didn't love. I understood it, so it didn't really get me that mad. But I knew they generally screw up the second round. And this was a second round pick they had to get correct. they needed, more help on the defensive end. And I had guys that I really wanted them to take. And it kind of just set up perfectly. I turned myself on two or so minutes later, they make the pick, and I just went nuts. I was disgusted. It bothered me. I'll send you the reaction. I still have it. I was interviewed by like some TV stations and stuff. It went really viral. It was a really popular video, and it was funny because in the comments afterwards, it was, this guy is everything Philadelphia is, and the fans, and it was true in a way, but I think I went a little overboard. But I was really annoyed. I hated the pick.
It's passion.
It worked out though, Robert.
It's passion.
I think, and it was passion. You're right. It was from the hip, and it was organic.
Do you feel like even though you were mad at first, do you think that the pick didn't end up being as bad as you thought?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I never in a million years would have thought that Carson Wentz would be on one of your old teams, the Colts, and in a better situation. And I'm happy for him. I always liked Carson Wentz. I wish it would have went different here. I think he just sadly went out with injury, and they won a Super Bowl, and he from then on was never the same. But I think ultimately I'm happy that they made the pick. I don't even think they thought that's how it would shake out. But at the time, they had just gave Carson Wentz a contract, and it was like, well, why are you doing
$100 million that?
Yeah, and it's like this is a second round. You have major needs in the defensive backfield and just all over the place. And they decided to take a quarterback in the second round, and I just thought this is moronic. And but it ended up working out. So.
Moronic. You mentioned earlier when you were talking about kind of what you're known for, it's just being straight up. And that's kind of something that I'm, hoping to be in this industry, is someone that's vulnerable and honest. And when I lose, and I call it out before anyone has a chance to. I'm out there saying, hey, that was a really bad pick and this is a really bad night, and it is what it is. But you also mentioned,
a second. Don't you know though, on Twitter everyone wins, they never lose?
Of course.
Did you know that?
Of
Everyone
course.
wins. They all win after the fact.
Absolutely. And when I win, silence. When I lose, the DMs are popping off. I have definitely learned that about this industry, but you use the word controversial, and I love that. And I don't know if there is a company more controversial than Barstool, and I think it works to their favor. And I think, let's get real. There are people that work with Barstool that a lot of people can't stand. They're like, God, they're loud, they say the wrong thing, they don't have a filter, but it works for them. And it gets them views. And there's a reason that it is so successful. And I know that you had worked with Barstool for a little bit. Do you think that your bluntness and your, ability to just call it like you see it helped you land that job?
Listen, I hate to say this, but I will. They would probably be the only company I think I could work for at that level. They just allow you at Barstool to be who you want to be.
I love that.
And I remember when the first time I met Dave Portnoy, this was like 3 years ago. I've been kind of in the ether there for a while, and this was back before they had gambling content there. This was before PASPA even was passed. This was a long time ago. I remember he asked me to come up there. It was February of 2018, I believe. I went up there, and I remember, it was funny. I remember one of my friends told me, they're like, what kind of suit are you going to wear? What are you going to dress up? I'm like, I'm not wearing a suit. Like, I'm just going to go up there and be myself. Like, I'm going to, rock what I rock every day, And I went up there, and I remember getting off the elevator, and security walked me into his office, and he looks at me and goes, "You're the guy." He goes, "Holy fuck." He's like, "You're straight out of Central Casting." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You just look like a gambler." And from then on, I think we kind of hit it off, him and I, and it was a long road. I went there during the pandemic, which was tough. I had some inner issues with certain people that worked there, and it ultimately didn't work out for me. But one thing I will say that I love about Barstool is they've still kept me involved with a lot of the content they're doing. I think I curry favor with a lot of the people that matter there. And I'll be honest, I've been talking with them a little recently, and I'm sure down the road, we'll have some sort of reunion of some sort. But they're the one company. I think that's what some companies do in this business and some don't. You have to let people be organic and be who they are, because you'll get the best out of them. You can't have these like these charlatans and these people that pretend to be something that they're not. There are people that gamble. There are people that maybe don't gamble, but they have a experience. Like both of you guys. Like Olivia, you're like a quintessential, like, you can report, you're a great host, and that's needed in this business. And then you have Robert, who has something that I never could experience, and I don't know that life. I was never, you know, things that I don't, and that's what makes you guys so organic. So there are people that live it and are what it is. Am I the best gambler in the world? No. Am I the nicest guy in the world or whatever? No. But at the end of the day, I move the needle. I say things that are interesting. And when it comes to basketball and certain football and certain other sports, I know what the hell I'm doing. I can do content for it.
Well, speaking of content, we have your Jalen Hurts video queued up. I'm going to give some warning here. There's some language. But guess what? He just got done saying that he is who he is. He will not apologize for it. So we've got it queued up. Let's take a look at this viral, sensational Jalen Hurts reaction video.
What? What the fuck? A quarterback? What the fuck? We have a fucking quarterback! We don't need a fucking quarterback in the second fucking round! What the fuck is wrong with this guy? He's a fucking imbecile!
Oh my God. First of all, you look so different. Congratulations on your weight loss, because
that's some real mental shit right there.
Wow, you look great.
I respect that. For real. I really do.
Yeah, and that's that. When I look at that video, that's one thing, because I don't want to go back to that time of my life. Really, it was, you know, that version of me was a little different. But yeah, no, that it was. Look, I was mad. I get very annoyed with this team, and it's not just them. You know, the Sixers get me pretty mad as well. So.
Yeah, if you're a Sixers fan, it's got to be tough.
Yeah, it is.
I get mad at. I'm not even a Sixers fan.
My entire life, we've watched them just waste talent and not surround talent with talent, and they did it with the Eagles. They've done it with the Sixers. So luckily, we won a Super Bowl a few years ago, and that's helpful. But yeah, I was very mad that night. I wore my heart on my sleeve with it.
100%. It was worn on the sleeve, and we saw it, and I loved every second of it. You know, it sounds like you have got some interesting things brewing up for your career, which is really exciting. I know you can't talk about a lot of it, so congratulations ahead of time, because I think you have a very bright future in this industry. I think people love listening to you. I know I do. You've got that it factor, because like you said, you just don't give a shit, and that's exactly what it takes in this industry to stand out. But because you've been in this industry for so long, I'm kind of wondering where you think this industry is going. Obviously, we are seeing a new state every week joining the conversation to legalize gambling in their state. You know, for a long time, Vegas was the one lone soldier, and now we're seeing more states are getting on board than they're not. And so I would love to know your take on the growth in this industry. Have there been challenges as this industry has grown, and where do you see this industry going in the next few years?
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. I will say, I think when it comes to people like me, I don't think it's particularly good for people like me, because, you know, the truth of the matter is most of these big companies, ESPN, all these different companies, they want buttoned up people that are just going to talk, and they're not going to, you know, like, you don't want me on a network, because I'll say something that, you know, I'll call a coach out or a player, and look, for whatever reason, we look down on that in society. We don't want people that want to speak the truth, and you know, that's why I'm so happy there are companies like a Barstool, or even your company, where they're willing to hire people that are edgy and are going to have a good time, because at the end of the day, people love that. For whatever reason, these big companies don't get that. But but yeah, I think you know, I just look at the states, and I've always said, like, when you prohibit things in states or on a national level, it's going to create things that you don't want to be created. And I think mostly all of these vices should be allowed, whether it's marijuana, whether it's, you know, look, if you want to have sex with somebody and pay them, that's your business. Like, why should I decide whether you want to do that? I'm just being real. And when it comes to sports, I think the same way. We're all adults. If we want to go out and gamble on something, everybody's doing it anyway. So it's like, why are we not going to make revenue off of it? And I think states are realizing, look, with that pandemic, they're a lot in the hole, and they're going to have to try to make that money back. And sports betting is a great place to start. I know you report on that stuff, and just with how much this has made, like a state like Colorado, how much money that's brought into a state like that. So, yeah, I think it's good for the business. I also think what it does is it creates integrity in the business. When there was no regulation of the industry, there were a lot of things that were going on that shouldn't go on. And I think it's been good for me just from a fact of like college basketball is a prime example. 10 years ago when you bet college basketball, you were really only able to bet about 100 of the teams. There are 357 college basketball teams. You're only able to bet about 100 of them. So basically the teams that would make the tournament every year and maybe 20 or so more. Now you can bet I can bet on Mississippi Valley State, or I can bet on Duke, or I can bet on Southern Utah. You can bet on every team, and I think that's what regulation is allowed. There's more oversight, and you can trust kind of what you're betting into now. So that's helpful. Plus, I don't got to worry about if I bet on something. Look, when I was younger, I played poker, and I was part of Black Friday when the federal government seized PokerStars and Full Tilt and all these different sites. And when you would bet into an offshore book, there was a question of, let's say I turn up 6 G's with this site, am I going to get paid? If I'm betting with an illegal bookmaker on the street, are they going to pay me? Maybe they get indicted and they don't pay me. Like, all that stuff is gone now, because if I go to a sports book, I know I'm going to get paid.
Right.
What about from an athlete standpoint?
Yeah, well, that's
former athletes obviously getting into the betting space, myself being one of them. We've seen other athletes. What about current athletes that are still playing in their careers?
I think former athletes obviously are fine because they're no longer involved in, unless they're coaches or something. But I think it does present a bit of a gray area for a lot of athletes. I think, look, I know from like experience with people that I know, every league has security forces, and I know you know that, that are going to look into stuff, and they're gonna cross every T and dot every I, and they're gonna look into people and say, are these people? So there's a fine line where an athlete kind of has to stay away from that stuff, as you know. Do I worry about fixing? No, none of that. But like, I guess it's just, is it okay for an NFL player to bet on baseball in the middle of the summer? I think there's a lot of gray areas that need to be addressed, and I'm sure the teams will do a good job at bringing in people and making that happen. But I know for a fact, like, I know people in the industry that I'm in that have been picked up by the MLB security and basically hassled about talking to certain people and who they shouldn't speak to. So yeah, it gets pretty interesting. And then you'll have situations like, I don't know if you guys know, but there was a guy that a certain network reported on. He was a big bettor. He lost some games. He bet a lot of money on these teams. He started contacting the players and threatening them and doing all this different stuff. So there's some things that will be created that I think will always kind of say, well, see, look, we should never have involved this, but they're going to involve it. There's a lot of money behind it. There just needs to be a line between the athlete and the industry.
I was going to say, Turbo and I have talked about that, where it's like, if gambling becomes something where, maybe eventually you have sports books in the stadium, in the arenas, and it's very involved in the sports, there does need to be a level of protection for these players, because when it comes to money, people get scary. People get aggressive. They want their money. They want it now. And that could be a concern for some people in
pro sports, it's not a problem. Because, like, at the end of the day, there are significant situations in the 70s and 80s where, the mob was like Boston College University had a big point shaving scandal back in the 80s involving Henry Hill and the Goodfellas guys from the movie. A lot of people don't know about that. College people, maybe, I'm sure there's stuff that goes on. I know in San Diego, about 15 years ago, the University of San Diego had a point shaving issue with one of their star players. I remember the guy. The pros, I don't worry. The pros make too much money. No pro is going to take 50 G's to throw a game. I mean, they make more than that. So I don't think you have to worry about it with pros. But yeah, I think it's all mostly just kind of good sizzle stuff. I don't think anyone's actually doing it. Could it happen? Maybe in college or like overseas.
I was thinking college. Yeah, I mean, because college, you don't make any, you don't get shit in college. You don't make.
Well, it's funny. It's interesting, Robert. I know. One of the things I'm doing now is I have a podcast that's totally different from sports betting, where I talk about the mafia history and stuff. And I talked about last year, I believe in Staten Island, there was people in the Gambino crime family that were targeting individuals on Staten Island that played at certain colleges. So it still goes on a little bit. At high levels, probably not, but you just need a fine line. You need people that will investigate that stuff and keep it regular.
You mentioned that, a TV network wouldn't want someone like yourself.
Yeah.
Just your go with the flow type of, mentality when it comes to reporting or making videos about sports betting. But I do have to wonder a little bit, like a game last night, for example, the Suns are up by 20. You can kind of hear a change in tone with these broadcasters. The game's no longer super exciting.
Yeah,
they're kind of checked out. Fans are starting to leave the building, whatever. However, for people that have a bet on the over or a player prop and their player's still on the court, they're still watching. They're still tuned in. They're still excited or nervous or whatever. And then you have the broadcasters who are kind of over it. They're up by 20. There's 3 minutes left. 3 minutes to a sports bettor is a lot of time. The bet can still hit, right? I mean, if you've got the over or, you've got the under, whatever bet it is, to be honest with you, there is always still time for you to make your money. So do you see potentially more sports bettors kind of getting those credentialed roles in these sports broadcasting positions, whether it be reporters or maybe we have halftime reporters that check in and say, hey, if you bet the total, here's where we're at. We're right on track, or we're not close at all, because I do think there is a level of we're not on the same page sometimes with the people reporting the games. When I've got a bet, I'm still hyped. So don't let your energy crash on me. But we see that sometimes. So do you think there's a spot for sports betting talents in this space in a more credentialed role?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said I think there should be a network dedicated to, if you've ever watched NBA TV or the MLB network or even on football Sundays with Red Zone, there needs to be a dedicated network where every night, whether it's baseball or basketball or whatever, there's sports betting coverage that covers games that are close from a point spread standpoint, and it's strictly sports betting content. That needs to happen. I'm surprised there haven't been broadcast created. I see some places doing it where they'll have the problem that these networks have that are doing stuff like that. And look, I mean no disrespect when I say this, but sports bettors don't give a shit about analytic crap. We want to hear from people that can talk about games, but bring it in a fun way. I don't care about the square root of pi involving how you that doesn't. Nobody wants to hear that. So I think that we're getting to that level, but credentialed stuff would be tough. Where I've often said, I would love to be in a press conference after the game and raise my hand and say, "Hey, I'm so and so with so and so. What did you do that for, and why did you do it?
Because you lost me money, you a-hole.
Yeah, and you lost a lot, But I don't know if we'll get ever to that point.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, and I've commented on this before as well. Print media, traditional media from a sports standpoint is very bad now. I remember when I first started doing this, you could depend on a beat reporter from, let's say, from Utah State in Logan, where Robert went, or in Tallahassee or wherever. You could depend on them to get you information on teams because that's what their job was. They literally worked, and their job was to learn about Utah State football. And nowadays, you have these guys that are paid to know about a team, and I know the info before they do. And it's the media has gotten really bad, and I think that's just a problem with our media nowadays. But I don't know where
I refresh my Twitter and it's telling me something before the TV does with the actual game on it. Sure, and I'm like, oh my God, wait, Giannis is hurt. And then 5 seconds later, I look at the TV and he's getting hurt. I'm like, the phone thing it's crazy how much information you can get. And I think too, with sports betting, it's such a timely industry because, if I were to post at 10 a.m. saying, here's what the line is, make sure you grab it. 2 minutes later, that line could change depending on the information that's in the universe. So it's a very timely business where you've always got to be, on your game, and print takes time. You've got to write it out. You've got to take it here, take it there, whatever. And in sports betting, there's no time for that. We need to know now. And
if between college football or NFL, you have literally 6 days between Sunday and Saturday or Saturday and Sunday, For you to not know that a player's out, and then 5 minutes before the game you report, "Hey, so and so is not out." How'd you not know that like 2 days ago? Like you literally had every practice. Like, what are you doing all day? Like, I guess that's my issue, and that's the issue with college. Sometimes where you have to be able to differentiate what's true and what's not. But look, it's evolving all for the better, and I just hope that they do it in a way where it's not all this just buttoned up nonsense where it's like we can't talk about sports betting, and if we reference it, it's just got to be taboo. You need to open it up. You need to bring on people that are likable and or interesting, and I think that's why you're seeing companies like Barstool become what they are, because most people are just regular people. They don't want to, they just want to hear about things, and they want it to be fun and delivered in the way they like. So yeah,
absolutely.
Now some players do take up until like the last second to make a decision on whether or not somebody's going to play. You know what I'm saying? But I agree with you for the most part. It's like teams.
But Robert, if a player's missed practice, why aren't you not telling people that? I remember Houston.
Like, what's the big deal, right?
Yeah, Houston University. They have a guy that's been there like 30 years, Joe Duarte. He's one of the worst beat reporters on earth. He literally, like, I remember during a basketball season, a player has COVID. Okay, they get tested every day. This guy reports 5 minutes from the game, "Hey, so-and-so's out." How'd you not know that, Rob or Joseph, the entire week? Like, you've been with the university for 30 years. You would think, hey, maybe we should text Joe and say, hey, so-and-so's out. But you're right. I should probably be a little less hard on maybe the professionals. But yeah, we'll see where it all goes. I think, again, and I'll be very brutally honest with both of you, over the last year or two, I have not become, like, out on this business. Just I'm a little less – I don't have the same passions that I used to. I still love college basketball and football. And I'm sure once football starts, I will be right back in. But yeah, I think I've noticed just in my own personal life, like, there are other things than gambling. And I guess for a long time, like, I just cemented myself in that. Like, and that was one of the reasons I got to 340 pounds. Like, I have an office in my house. I was literally sitting here all day. And I was just, I became really, like, reclusive. And I was just gambling. And that's all I was doing. And it kind of became unhealthy at some point. So I think, like, as I've told you, Liv, like, you've got to have balance with this. You've got to go out and do other things and try to – and that's one of the things about this other show I'm doing. Like, this other show I'm doing, I'm 12 episodes in. I already have hundreds of thousands of listens, and I'm saying to myself, maybe this is something I could do long term, and I could turn it into something huge, and sports betting could be just a side thing. I've sold picks. That's something that is a way different industry than anything you've talked about.
Right.
Liv, you talk about people on Twitter. Go sell picks and lose 7, 8, 9 games in a row. And some of the lowest points in my life were when I sold picks. It's a moneymaker, but there's a lot of different industries you can get in this business, and I've been into all of them, and they're all stressful.
Absolutely. No, it's a lot of pressure. I mean, I think the reality is when it's people's money that you're messing with, not that you're messing with it, but, people, they get crazy. They get, and that's something that I've even said too. I don't think I have thick enough skin. I have thick skin, but not thick enough to ever sell my picks. I don't think I ever want to go down that road.
Listen, it's a lucrative business, especially if you have a following. I mean, I've had some great seasons with that. But again, when you give out picks for free and you have a really good season, 2018, I remember I had a great season, like a banner season. That's when I really jumped on the map for college basketball. And I remember that next year I said, you know what? I got to cash in on this, right? I'd created a market, supply and demand. I said, look, you're not getting the drugs for free anymore. You got to buy them. And, I not drugs, but the picks. I call them drugs because they were like drugs to people. I created a website and I put it out there. And I remember it was crazy. I remember calling my dad and told him how much money I made. And then I said, oh, wait, now I have to start giving picks out and I have to win. And I remember that year, 2019, I went 0-9 the first 9 games of the season. And I remember that night, it was the worst night I've ever had. I felt so bad. I was so down in the dumps. And I remember that point, I said, you know what? This is great money, but I've got to find other ways to make money doing this and not have so much stress. And it just weighs down on you. And look, you think losing on Twitter is bad? Wait till you have 250 people that have paid you to give them advice, and you go 0-9, and it was by sheer like randomness. But they don't want to hear that. You know, they pay
Right.
you,
Right.
and like if you go to the mechanic and they put a tire on wrong, you're going to be pissed off. You paid them to put the tire on correctly,
Right.
And when it's people's money, they get pissed.
I think it's good to keep that in mind, the whole mental health aspect of this business. I've been very transparent and honest and open about my mental health journey. I basically do journal. Journey and on my platform, and I've spoken very openly about it because I think it's something that you don't realize, that with any job there's stress, of course, but it can be tough in this industry, not only to put yourself out there, put your face out there every day, but then, you know, to add the money aspect to it. I don't even sell my picks, and people still give me a hard time when my picks don't hit. I'm like, I'm giving you free. I'm telling you what I am taking. That does not mean that you have to take it. It's for free. Just ride or tail, whatever you want to do. You know, I don't care, but I do think it's important that people understand the mental health part of this business. I've had days where I just, you know, it feels like it's all consuming sometimes because, like Turbo said earlier in the show, there's always something to talk about in the sports betting world. There's always something happening. There's always a line that needs to be talked about. There's always a game on, whether it's Russian table tennis or, you know, a primetime NBA basketball game. It's happening 25/8 is what it feels like sometimes. And so finding ways to kind of set work aside for a minute and focus on you, I think is very important.
And the thing is, like in anything that you do or I've done or whatever, I just always look at it and say, like, even that night when I was 0-9, like I just thought to myself, you know what? It could be way worse. You know,
Right.
I think sometimes you have to just look at yourself and say, you know what? This sucks right now, but let me change it and not ever be in this position again, and you'll be good. So, you know, with people on the internet, it used to bother me. I used to engage with them. I used to like go out of my way to like find out who they were. And then someone told me that I respect a lot. They said, like, look, you wake up every day, you do what you want to do. You don't got to go punch a clock like a normal person. You found a lane. You know, people care about what you do, and you can kind of do what you want. And you're young and whatever. And I said, you know what? Why do I care about what some guy in Nova Scotia thinks of me? And he's not going to ever support me anyway, so who cares? You know, let him talk,
Right.
And it is what it is. I don't care anymore. I find it funny now. You know, I wish they'd spend a little bit more time on things that actually matter. I mean, I don't really matter that much. Like, go put that effort into, like, you know, solving cancer or something bad, you know?
Go take a walk. Go walk your dog. Go make a sandwich, but leave me alone.
I take it. It is what it is. It's funny to me at this point. I laugh about it.
I've been thinking about this throughout the show. I know this is kind of a little bit. We're supposed to ask you something, but I want to ask you this real quick because you talked about college basketball, and that was kind of like your meat and potatoes, I guess, to call it, right? In sports betting. And I just feel like college basketball is impossible, especially now, to bet on because it's like there's no dominant teams anymore. I feel like in college basketball, how did college basketball become like your main thing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've been a college basketball guy like my whole life. When I was a little kid, I mean, I remember 6, 7 years old, I was watching college basketball. I would used to, during the tournament, I would cut out of the newspaper the bracket and I'd fill it out, and I loved it. You know, growing up, 2001, Temple went to the Elite Eight. Allen Iverson, the Sixers went to the finals that year. I've always loved basketball. And for me, basketball was cool because I could almost – I don't want the dominant teams. I don't really even care to bet on those teams. I want to find the mid-majors, the low majors that I can really kind of perfect and understand. And I know that bookmakers, particularly at the beginning of the season, have no idea what those teams are and what they can be. And I just enjoy kind of burying into those areas and just getting where the bookmakers aren't and trying to go into certain conferences that I know I can kind of understand. And for me, basketball is all about schematics. So like, you know, if a team plays a zone and they're really long in the perimeter, you know, it probably wouldn't be good to take a team that is really dependent on making shots from the outside and threes and things like that. So I look at how a team's going to play against another team schematic-wise. And I know personnel, I know the players, I know the coaches, I know the systems that they're running. And I could just kind of bury my head in those kind of things that people aren't necessarily worried about. I'll let other people bet, you know, the Dukes and the Carolinas and the Gonzagas. And I'll stick to, you know, the really low teams, you know, the Big Sky and the SWAC and those kind of teams where I can kind of identify really bad teams, really good teams, and teams that will just dominate each other.
Yeah. I think it's important to keep in mind that sometimes the value is not in the big dogs. It's in those, those smaller teams that don't get talked about. Sometimes that's where you find the best value.
Absolutely.
Long story short, you have been in this industry a long time. You've talked about a lot of different things on this show, but let's wrap with some advice for anyone that's interested in joining this sports betting space, whether it be just as a bettor, maybe as a handicapper, or as a talent who wants to do what you're doing and talk about, their bets online and make videos and fun content. What's your advice for anyone that's interested?
You want me to be real with you? Because I always am.
Yeah, I do.
To get into content, unless you are an athlete or someone that can host, I would tell you to not get into it. I think it's a very tough thing to do. I've done this for a long time, and I still haven't gotten to where I want to go yet. I mean, I still, I'm very blessed that I was able to work at a place like Barstool and still have a connection there or to other places. But it's real hard. I mean, real hard. And I luckily got into it when there weren't a lot of people doing it, and I kind of just always was staying power and had staying power. But to be a bettor, sure, whatever. But I think you have to have something that sets you apart. You have some integral look into something that I don't have, or you can host. Hosting is the thing that I would, and I think that's what you do, Olivia, really well. Hosting and directing a conversation and, having the ability to talk about so many different things. When someone can really perfect something and they know what they're talking about, you want to talk to them. You want to listen to what they're saying. So I would just say if you're going to get into it, you got to find something that sets you apart. These people that just get into it and are buttoned up, boring, and they just have one way of doing things, I don't think they're going to last that long. They'll be knocked out pretty quick. You got to have creativity. You got to be interesting. You got to have a different look or a different way of doing things, and do it. Don't be scared. And also be controversial. You look at the most famous person in media ever, Howard Stern. He was the most controversial person you could ever imagine, and he set the way for people to do and be who they want to be, and people like that. People like that stuff, so I would say be that way.
Absolutely. Well, we have a Super Bowl champion here, Mr. Turbo.
Right,
you do,
right. I want to ask this though, Liv, real quick. All right, before you do this, because in your background, for people who aren't watching this show, won't watch this show, will only listen to it, right? Uh-huh. You've got Biggie on one side, a mirror of Biggie, you got a mirror of Michael Jordan. I got to know what's up with that. I got to know, are those just your guys? Yeah. What is it? The inspiration?
Well, I think when I was very young, 6, 7 years old, Michael Jordan was, Space Jam and all like that. He was just on another level. And then it was Allen Iverson. Those are my two basketball heroes. And, look, if you grew up in the 90s, Michael Jordan was, he was the king. He was the GOAT. And,
100%.
I've always just been enamored. Like I have the 11s, the Jordan 11s are my favorite sneaker ever. I'm still a sneaker guy. I mean, as I get older, I don't buy them as much, but I've always loved the sneakers, and I've always been a tracksuit guy. I wear tracksuits. I have probably 60 different tracksuits, and I always love the Jordan ones, and I've just always been enamored by Michael, and those Bulls teams are just so terrific, and I think he set the stage for kind of the bar. And as far as Biggie, really quick story. This is a story I don't think I've ever shared, frankly. When I was, maybe 10 or 11 years old, I went to the mall and I was able to get Life After Death. I bought the album. And I remember, I don't know how I got it because you couldn't buy albums that young when I was that age. I remember I went home and my parents were out to dinner that night and I was home alone we had like a babysitter, but she wasn't anywhere near my room. And I remember I had the CD on and I was playing it. And I love that album. I think it's one of the great albums ever. I remember my dad came home. And I didn't know that he came home, and I had this music blaring. And I was kind of a problem child. I was becoming a little bit of a behavioral issue in school. And I remember my dad walked in, and he goes, "What's that you're listening to there?" I said, "This is this new rapper I found." I said, "He's awesome. He's dope." And my dad goes, "Let me see the CD." And he grabbed the CD, and he snapped it in half. And he goes, "I don't want you guys listening to music like that." He didn't want me to become, but as we got older, I remember we heard Big Papa, and I remember I said to my dad, "Yo, remember when you broke that CD?" Because he didn't want me to get into bad things like that. And
right.
I remember we still joke to this day about that, and we become, I think through Biggie became like very close in a way. I wasn't always close with my dad, but he's always been one of my favorites, and I was able to get the Michael one, and I knew like they're both Brooklyn guys. A lot of people don't know Michael's from Brooklyn, and I knew kind of centering myself in the middle, I could have both goats on the wall. And
I love that.
Yeah, that's a dope story.
It's Jay-Z and Biggie for me as far as my all-time goats. Now I have a lot of Philly goats as well because I'm a Philly guy, but yeah, they're my two number ones.
Who knew Biggie Smalls was gonna rekindle a father-son relationship?
Right.
He definitely did. That was
that's what's up.
And it's funny too because the breaking the CD, like my dad broke a lot of things I had. That was his thing. He would always because it would get my thing. I remember when I bought a cell phone on my dad's name one time because we have the same name. We're both named Jeff. I'm a junior, and I remember I got a Sidekick. Do you guys remember Sidekicks?
Is that the one that flips? When
it was like it would flip.
That was the one. That was like the one for a minute.
I went to T-Mobile and I got a cell phone plan on my dad's name because we had the same name. And some sleazy salesman sold me the phone. I remember a couple years later, the bill came in the mail, and I didn't know it came. And I sat down at the dinner table. My dad goes, "You have a good day at school?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "It was great." He goes, "Hey, we got a bill in the mail from T-Mobile." He goes, "Funny thing is," he goes, "we don't have T-Mobile." And he goes, "That new phone you got, it's nice." He's like, "It looks awesome." He goes, "Let me see that." Snapped it in half. He said, "Who told you to get a phone in my name?" And that was my dad's thing. He would always do that. So I always go back to those two stories with my dad. But it made me kind of understand that you can't do stuff like that, and I kind of learned in a weird way. And I think it saved me because I was always the kid in school when I was young, gambling and stuff. I was always hanging out with wrong people, and my parents did not raise me that way. And I think their things like doing stuff like that kind of got me out of that stuff. Because without my parents, I 100% would be in prison, guaranteed. So I owe a lot to them for that.
Well, we're happy you're not. We're also very happy that you are here and you joined us. And it sounds like you've got really big plans for your future. And we're really excited to watch that all unfold. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to bring you back on here during NFL season. We'll do a little check-in on those Eagles of yours and see how Jalen Hurts is doing this year.
Well, hey, I'll tell you this. You have a fan in me, guys. I've really great work. Keep doing the things. I know both of you are trying to kind of enter, but I think you have both great ideas and you have a great kind of platform, I think. So, good luck, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
You got it.